All right, let's go across to Cyprus. DD India Shubhendu Ghosh joins us live from there. Shubhendu, first time in 2 decades, Indian Prime Minister is visiting Cyprus. Tell us about the particular areas in focus and what all is expected.
That's right, Abhishek. Good morning from Cyprus, from Limassol. 2 decades later, an Indian Prime Minister is visiting Cyprus, hugely significant. The anticipation is very high. Also, remember, for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, after Operation Sindoor, this is the first foreign visit. So this visit is very high on both symbolism and real areas of engagement. If we talk about the areas of engagement in particular, we also take a cue from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's departure statement. There's a great focus on economic engagement between India and Cyprus. If you see the location of Cyprus, it's the middle of the continent. It's an island nation between the Mediterranean, in the Mediterranean, connecting Europe and the Middle East in many ways. It's seen as a gateway to these thriving regions. So in that sense, a closer partnership with Cyprus means India's increasing footprint, both in terms of economic engagement and strategic partnership. Particular areas of focus, we are told, is going to be innovation. There's a thriving startup culture that is also coming up in Cyprus. India is already home to the 3rd largest startup ecosystem. In that sense, exchange of ideas, exchange of talents is something that is going to be promoted by both the leaders, Prime Minister of India and the President of Cyprus. Security is another aspect. As I mentioned, it's coming after Operation Sindoor. Both India and Cyprus have always been on the same page as far as the stand on counter-terrorism is concerned. Cyprus also has had a troubled history with its sort of neighbor in the region, Turkey, and the Cyprus question that has sort of dominated the country for nearly 50 years. India has always stood with Cyprus in such matters, and I've always said that these conflicts have to be solved in a peaceful way, in a democratic way, in a way which is akin to international laws. So in that sense, a lot of areas of engagement, technology, renewable energy is another area where these two nations could work together closely.
All right, you're saying Shubhendu, India has always stood with Cyprus. Tell us the historical relationship India share with Cyprus. Why is this visit of Prime Minister Modi strategically important ahead of the G7 summit that will be held in Canada?
Abhishek, India and Cyprus have shared civilizational ties. From the dawn of humanity, there are these archaeological traces that have been found about hundreds and thousands of years ago, exchange of ideas and people between India and Cyprus. Come to the modern times, they've shared a similar history, similar colonial history under the British. They fought the colonial rule. In fact, India, after it gained independence, played a key role in Cyprus getting its independence in the 1960s. And ever since 1962, the diplomatic relations were established. They've always had very, very close and friendly ties. In a very sensitive time for India, in the aftermath of Pahalgam terror attack, Cyprus was one of the first countries to very vocally condemn the terrorist attack and condemn terrorism in all its forms. So India counts Cyprus as a very, very close ally in terms of ideas, in terms of the democracy and freedom that it sort of represents. And similarly, Cyprus also counts on India's support in dealing with its own disputes at home, which have been pending to be solved for a long time. But India has maintained its stand very clearly and stood with Cyprus in a very strong manner. And in the 21st century, a forward-looking partnership. Remember, it's an island nation, so climate change and these calamities have a particular impact on island nations. And India has made important strides in renewable energy, clean energy initiatives. So in that domain of engagement, these two countries are working very closely, particularly in solar and other renewable energy domains. So we see that from civilizational ties to forward-looking 21st century engagement, India and Cyprus have been very close.
Shubhendu, also another significance of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, maybe Cyprus set to hold the rotating presidency of the EU Council in 2026. PM Modi's visit maybe paves the way for deeper India-EU collaboration during Cyprus leadership term?
Oh, absolutely. I think besides the very close and special and important bilateral engagement between India and Cyprus, this visit has to be seen in the larger context of India's outreach and connect with both the what is called the West Asia, the Middle East, as well as Europe. You rightly mentioned that Cyprus is set to take over the presidency. It's a rotating presidency for a period of 6 months. It takes over this presidency of the Council of European Union in 2026. It will therefore be setting the agenda and having a close ally, a close friend, setting the agenda in a region where we seek to increase our footprint, where we seek to increase our engagement. Remember, India-EU FTA, free trade agreement negotiations are also on. It also paves the way, as and when it's done, to greater strategic partnership, technological partnership, a people-to-people partnership between India and whole of Europe. So in that sense, Cyprus as a gateway, Cyprus as India's friend in the EU is hugely significant.
All right, Shubhendu, we'll leave it at that. Thank you for getting us, thank you for your views from Cyprus.